All right, let's get right into it. If you're studying for a change management certification, you know this is the big one. I mean, anyone can start a change, but making it actually stick, that's the real challenge. So today, we're going to do a super focused guide on the core concepts you absolutely need to nail to make sure any improvement isn't just a temporary fix, but a real, permanent upgrade. So here's our game plan. First, we're going to tackle the main reason that change so often fails. We're calling it the elastic band problem. Then, I'll give you 6 key strategies to fight back. After that, we'll get a little technical with control charts for monitoring, super important stuff. And then, we're going to zoom out and talk about the bigger picture, continuous improvement, and how you build a culture that actually lives and breathes it.
You know, this quote right here is going to be our guide for this whole discussion. Just picture it. Implementing a new process, that's like stretching an elastic band. It takes a big push, right? But the real work, the hard part, is holding it there. Because every single instinct, every bit of organizational gravity is just begging for you to let go so it can snap right back to the way things were.
So yeah, let's start right there. Before we can even begin to talk about sustaining change, we have to get real about the powerful forces that are always pulling people, pulling teams, back to the comfort of what they already know. Trust me, this is a core concept you're going to have to explain inside and out.
Okay, so here's the formal definition you'll want to have in your back pocket, the elastic band effect. And the key thing to remember is that good intentions just aren't enough. I mean, take the Octogen company. They rolled out this brilliant new order entry process. And for 3 months, it was amazing. Customer service scores were up. But guess what? 6 months later, the team had just drifted right back to their old clunky habits. The band snapped back.
So how in the world do you stop that snapback? Well, it's not about just trying harder, it's about having a system. This next part is going to give you the 6 essential strategies you need. Think of it like a toolkit for building a protective shield around your new process to make sure it becomes the new normal.
And here they are. I want you to think of these as 6 action items, 6 things you, as the change manager, have to be doing all the time, long after the launch party is over. We're talking about constantly reinforcing the why, keeping everyone in the loop, actually listening, being ready to adapt, measuring everything, and, this is a big one, celebrating the wins. Let's break down those first couple.
First off, you can never ever let people forget the why. That initial excitement, it fades. You have to keep reminding them, hey, remember all that hard work? It's paying off. Our sales are climbing. And number 2, you have to back that up with cold, hard data. Sharing progress updates isn't just about sharing info, it's about stoking the fire. Showing people that customer satisfaction jumped from a 62 to a 74, that proves the pain was worth it and keeps that momentum rolling.
Now, this is where things get really interesting because the process becomes a two-way street. The big idea here is that you've got to move past just having a suggestion box. Look, a new process is never perfect on day one. You only find the real issues when it's out in the wild, so you have to constantly be asking for feedback. But, and this is the crucial part, don't just listen to problems. When someone comes to you with a concern, your next question has to be, okay, what would you do about it? That gets them engaged and shows you're actually willing to tweak things based on what's happening on the ground.
This brings us perfectly to that 5th strategy, monitor and control. But to do this right, we have to get beyond just how people feel the new system is working. For your certification, you have to know the formal, objective, data-driven way to do this. So let's dive into the specifics of how you actually pull that off.
And this is the million-dollar question, isn't it? If we just go by gut feelings, we could easily miss that slow, creeping return to the old ways. We need a system, like an early warning alarm that tells us when we're drifting off course in a way that's statistically real. So, how do we do that?
Well, it all starts with your key performance indicators, your KPIs. You can think of these as the vital signs or the heartbeat of your new process. It could be anything. Customer satisfaction scores, the time it takes to process an order, the number of errors, whatever numbers best tell you if you're hitting the goals you set out to achieve. This is the what you're going to measure.
Now, you could just plot that KPI data on a simple run chart, just a line graph showing trends over time. But if you really want to monitor and control, you need to level up to a control chart. And this shows you the key difference perfectly. A control chart adds these magic lines, statistical control limits. Those limits are what turn a simple picture into a powerful tool that tells you if the little ups and downs are normal or if your process is truly going out of control.
The first of these lines is the lower control limit, or LCL. The easiest way to think about this is as the statistical floor for your process.
If your KPI is, say, customer satisfaction, and you see a data point dip below this line, that's a major red flag. It's the chart screaming at you that something fundamental has shifted for the worse, and you need to investigate now. And on the flip side, you've got the upper control limit, or UCL. But listen up, because here's the nuance you have to know for any exam. What this line means depends completely on what you're measuring. If you're tracking errors, then going above the UCL is a huge problem. But if you're tracking customer satisfaction, a point above the UCL is amazing. It's time to pop the champagne. It means the process is performing even better than you thought it could. Context is absolutely everything here.
Okay, so we've talked all about how to sustain one single change. But what's the next level up? It's about building an entire organization where getting better isn't some special project we do once a year. It's just what we do, all the time.
And that brings us to this key term, continuous improvement, which you'll also hear called by its Japanese name, Kaizen. The formal definition from the American Society for Quality is that it's the ongoing improvement of, well, everything, through both the small, tiny tweaks and the big, game-changing breakthroughs. I mean, think about Apple and the iPhone. That is Kaizen in action, year after year.
Now, this idea has been around for a while. It really got its start with Toyota and their legendary manufacturing system back in the 50s. But what's so cool is how this idea has just exploded. It's not just for car factories anymore. Today, Kaizen is a universal philosophy you see everywhere, from high-tech cybersecurity firms to hospitals trying to shorten patient wait times in the ER.
Really, at its heart, continuous improvement is just a mindset. It's about having the discipline to not get so lost in the day-to-day weeds that you can't step back, take that 30,000-foot view, and ask what is maybe the most powerful question in all of business. Hey, is there a better way to do this?
And asking that question, it's not just a nice to have. As you can see, we're calling it an imperative. Because in today's economy, if you're standing still, you're not just standing still, you are actively falling behind. Let's look at why this is no longer a choice.
I mean, just look at these cautionary tales. IBM used to be the name in personal computers. Sony and Panasonic, they basically owned the camera market. They all made improvements, sure, but their fatal flaw was that their improvements were too small and they came way too late. They just failed to see the freight train of disruption coming right at them.
And there's actually a name for this force, coined by the economist Joseph Schumpeter, creative destruction. It's this constant churning cycle where new innovations come along and just demolish old ways of doing business. The companies that get wiped out are almost always the ones that build a giant moat to protect the past, instead of embracing the future.
So the big question is, how do you avoid that fate and actually build a culture that thrives on this stuff? This checklist is your roadmap. First things first, you've got to have a strong foundation. That means getting executive support and institutionalizing change roles. If the bosses aren't on board and nobody's job is to actually drive this, it's dead on arrival. Next, you need a system for new ideas. You have to actively find opportunities, like with Gemba Walks, where you go to where the work actually happens to see for yourself. Then you have to manage that pipeline of ideas seriously, but you can't do it all, so you must be selective, using things like benefit-cost ratios to pick the winners. Of course, you can't live in a bubble, so you have to constantly benchmark against your competitors. And finally, the people part, which is maybe the most important. You have to communicate relentlessly and be ready to address resistance head-on. And that really brings us to the final critical question that wraps all of this up. When you look at your own organization or any company you're studying for your exam, just ask yourself this one thing. Is it spending all its energy building a moat to protect the way things have always been done? Or is it busy building a pipeline to fuel the future with new ideas and constant improvement? The answer to that question, well, it tells you everything you need to know.